Welcome to this week's Talking News for Friday, the 5th of July 2024. Our CEO, Lisa, is now on a 2-week holiday, so there won't be a CEO update for the next 2 weeks. On behalf of everyone at Sight for White, have a good weekend. Regards, Chris, Centre Manager.
Here is this week's charity news for the 5th of July 2024. White Sense are holding their monthly coffee morning on Monday at Brown's Cafe in Yaverland Road in Sandown, starting at 10:30am. This is for people specifically with hearing loss.
Swimming is on Monday at Medina Leisure Centre between 1:15pm and 2:15pm. We have the whole use of the large pool, so whether you are a lane swimmer or someone who just enjoys gentle exercise in the pool, this is open to everyone. The cost is £6 and transport can be arranged where possible.
There is yoga on Tuesday at Millbrook House between 1:45pm and 2:45pm. Refreshments are served afterwards and the cost is £4.
Our weekly coffee and chat is on Wednesday at Millbrook House between 10am and 11:30am. The cost is £2, which includes coffee and cake. The staff are always on hand to help with any inquiries, and equipment will be available to try out.
Thursday is Mix and Mingle. This group meets between 10:30am and 2pm every week. Booking for this group is essential, and at the moment there is a waiting list for people to join.
Our next Art with Maddie will now be on Wednesday the 11th of September. This is held at Parkland Centre, Ward Avenue. This is due to the ongoing building works at Parklands, but hopefully will be all completed for our September meeting.
Our next walk and talk will be on Friday the 12th of July. This month the group will be walking from Stag Lane in Newport to Key Arts Centre. The walk is a gentle stroll and a chance to chat with staff and volunteers. The minibus will leave Millbrook at 9:30 and collect anyone from the bus station en route to the start. The walk will leave the bottom of Stag Lane at 10am.
We have had a great response for Newport Carnival and therefore will be entering the evening procession on July the 20th, starting at 7pm from Church Lytton. We are meeting on Monday morning and anyone is welcome to discuss ideas on our entry this year. The meeting starts at 10am. If you are unable to come along but have some ideas on our entry this year, please do not hesitate to call the office.
Our monthly 100 Club has spare balls available. If anyone would like to buy a ball, it is £2 per month or £24 for the full year. The more balls in draw, the higher the prize money each month. If you would like to take part in our monthly draw, please call the office. This is part of our fundraising activities.
We're appealing for tombola prizes for our upcoming summer events. If you have anything you wish to donate, please do not hesitate to pop into Millbrook House, or alternatively, please call the office to arrange collection. If you would like to join any activity or want more details, please call the office on 522205.
This is Alison reading an article from BBC News entitled Blind Woman to Vote in Secret for the First Time. Kate Healy is set to vote for the first time without assistance from family or friends. A blind woman has said being able to vote in secret for the first time is a step up on the independence ladder. Kate Healy, 34, from Winchester, has previously had to vote by post or have assistance at the polling station. But on Thursday, she will be using a device called the McGonagall Reader, which combines an audio player with a plastic template to help her find the voting boxes on the ballot paper. Ms. Healy, who applied in advance to local electoral services to ensure she could use the kit, will be able to wear headphones to ensure her vote is kept secret. Kate Healy has previously had to rely on her partner Mike for support when voting. The vast majority of blind people have to be assisted by a companion or a polling staff member to read or mark their vote on the ballot paper. This can leave voters feeling humiliated and vulnerable, the Royal National Institute of Blind People, RNIB, said. Ms. Healy said, "I've previously voted with the help of a neighbour, friend or my partner. I don't like to ask staff because they are a stranger to me." Ms. Healy explained that at previous elections she had felt the process was very out of date with no privacy, but that the McGonagall reader would make things far better this time. "It may not be groundbreaking news, but for me it means everything. It's a chance to have exactly the same voting rights as everybody else in the UK and a step up on the independence ladder," she said. "It really means so much to be treated the same." Anne Tyler of the RNIB said about 2 million blind people and partially sighted people face barriers to voting. RNIB's Chair of Trustees, Anna Tyler, said it's been over 150 years since people have had the right to vote in secret. But this right still isn't afforded to many of the 2 million blind and partially sighted people like me, who face significant barriers to voting independently. Voting remains a fundamentally visual exercise. She explained that the charity has heard that often blind and partially sighted people have had to make their choices out loud, robbing them of their secret vote, leading to discomfort and uncertainty about whether their vote was cast as intended. The charity has written an open letter calling on the next Prime Minister to make voting accessible for all, to ensure visually impaired people can cast their vote independently and in secret.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Gunville residents furious with council over lack of action on flooding prevention. Gunville residents say they are furious about the lack of action they have seen from the Isle of Wight Council in preventing future flooding to homes in the area. In October 2023, residents in Arthur Moody Drive, Broadwood Lane, Forest Hills, Park Close and Ash Lane had to abandon their homes as floodwaters poured in. Since then, some homes have flooded a further 16 times during the winter months. Some residents who were left homeless by the floods last winter have only just been able to return home some 8 months later. Locals say they believe floodwater came from the re-diverted flow of water and blocked culverts on land behind their homes, consequently flooding the public highway and entering properties. Now, after several attempts to get the council to take action, residents say they are worried about the prospect of facing another winter unprotected from further flooding. They say it took the local authority 15 weeks and multiple emails to finally agree to a public meeting they had organised. A spokesperson for residents in the area has said it has been very difficult getting the council to do anything. They took a long time to answer the questions put to them. The flood report was continuously delayed, and at a public meeting on the 20th of May, the local authority turned the meeting into an opportunity to talk about a further 149 planned housing development to be built on known flood marshland in the Broadwood Lane area. We need the council to take action, but so far, in the last 8 months, all we have experienced is a lack of support, reticence and apathy towards finding a resolution and offering a permanent long-term solution to prevent further flooding. We've been told by a local authority planning officer that the council has no funding to tackle the issue, but they managed to find money for a costly flood Section 19 report, which was basically a cut and paste copy of a 2016 report already in existence that was commissioned by the local authority. It's been impossible to get the local authority to take responsibility for the flooding on the public highway. They have still not offered even a temporary solution to the flooding issue that has caused thousands of pounds of damage. We've tried numerous times to engage our local councillor, Joe Lever, who is as apathetic as the local authority. We've had many meetings with Joe, who shows little to no interest in speaking and fighting for us, despite the environmental issues around flooding and building on a greenfield site. The only person who's helped our cause without hesitation is Bob Seeley, who has championed our corner, attended meetings and spoken on our behalf. His support has been invaluable. We want the local authority, Island Roads, Southern Water and the whole community to work together towards a solution. At the moment, we're left without a plan and fearful of what the winter will bring. Someone needs to take responsibility for the flooding. Bob Seeley, who is standing for re-election as an MP for Isle of Wight West on Thursday, has said, Gunville residents need elected members to step up and take action to prevent the dreadful flooding they experienced last October from happening again. I've met with residents. I've seen what the floodwaters did to their homes. They deserve better. As so often is the case with elected members on this council, I'm having to step in to do their job for them. I've offered to put a series of questions to Southern Water and Island Roads on residents' behalf and invite them to engage with residents. We need the authorities to work together instead of passing the buck between them.
This is Chris, reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Voice of Summer. New e-scooters and e-bikes arrive on the Isle of Wight. A new range of e-scooters and e-bikes have arrived on the Isle of Wight this week. Riders will have 24/7 access to the electric vehicles on the Isle of Wight. VOI, VOI, is replacing Beryl, with the latter's contract coming to an end after almost 4 years. Is there an age limit? Anyone over the age of 16 can ride with VOI on the Isle of Wight. You will need a provisional or full driving licence in order to sign up to ride e-scooters, but you don't need one for e-bikes. How do I sign up to VOI? Users are asked to download the app and follow the instructions. To use e-scooters, you'll be asked to upload a photo of your driving licence and then take a selfie to verify that you're the person in the picture. A spokesperson for the company said, "You don't need a driving licence to ride the e-bikes, so you can skip the upload driving licence if you're just going to ride an e-bike. You're not allowed to share your account with anyone, and most definitely not your children or any underage person."
This is Alison reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio entitled Low-Income Families Among Good Causes to Benefit from Latest WhiteAid Grants. 6 good causes on the Isle of Wight have benefited from the latest donations from WhiteAid. A total of £7,925 was distributed at a recent ceremony at IFPL near Shalfleet. 2 WhiteAid donors, Paul Thomas from Isle of Wight Tomatoes and Paul Thorley from Vehicle Consulting Solent, presented the cheques. The biggest winner was Isle of Wight Pantries, which received £5,000. This funding will allow the charity to buy food to make a huge difference to low-income families on the island. The other big donation in this round was to Ventnor and District Local History Society. It received a new scanner and laptop, which will help the ambitious job of digitising audio and photographic artefacts. Daisy Chain's Isle of Wight received a grant towards extending their pitch at the Isle of Wight Festival. Mandy Fuller from the charity said, "We were delighted to receive a grant from WhiteAid to support our fundraising at the Isle of Wight Festival this year. We have a pop-up tea and cake cafe that over the years has become very busy. The grant allowed us to add another marquee, which gave us more space for serving, and we were able to buy more seating. This enabled us to serve more people this year, increasing our income. Huge thanks to WhiteAid for their support. It really makes a huge difference to what we do." Other smaller grants of under £500 went to the following: East Cows Partnership to purchase equipment for a new drop-in session for 0 to 4-year-old children. Shanklin Regatta, which has been established since 1853, received a grant towards purchasing banners and posters for its free fun day on the beach on August the 8th. The Starlight Academy's grant will help take 5 Starlight dancers to the finals of the Global Dance Competition in the Netherlands. Jeff Underwood, founder of WhiteAid, thanked each charity for the amazing work they do and for their dedication to island life. WhiteAid has distributed over £650,000 to more than 230 local charities. Donors are primarily local businesses, but also many individuals who all have a passion for the island. Jeff said, "It is great to support all these good causes, but we can only do it with the help of the individuals and businesses who put their hands in their pockets. We are grateful for that support."
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Isle of Wight named once again as Destination of the Year at Top Travel Awards. The Isle of Wight has been named Best UK Destination of the Year for the second year running in the Group Leisure and Travel Awards. The island faced tough competitions from destinations such as London, Leicester and Leicestershire, Norwich, Wiltshire and York. At last Thursday's 27th of June award ceremony held at the Royal Garden Hotel in Kensington, London. After lifting the trophy aloft in 2023, the Isle of Wight was named Best UK Destination of the Year once again in 2024, voted for by those responsible for planning successful holidays. Will Miles, Managing Director of Visit Isle of Wight, says, "This is great news not only for Visit Isle of Wight, but for all of the island businesses that deliver such a great service for groups, including the transport providers to, from and on the island." The island celebrated other successes as Warner Leisure Hotels, with locations at Bembridge Coast and Norton Grange, was awarded Best Accommodation for Groups. Amy Summers, Sustainable Travel Trade and Exhibitions Manager for the Isle of Wight, adds, "I'm honoured to accept this award alongside Will on behalf of the island for a second year in a row. The group's market is key for the island, and we have been working hard to enhance our promotion and meet with trade organisations to make sure the island continues to be a first-choice destination for group travel. My continued thanks to the Exhibitions Partnership for supporting us with the shared vision to promote the island, and a final thanks to everyone that voted for us." The annual initiative is organised by Group Leisure and Travel magazine and voted for by readers who organise a variety of day trips, short breaks and holidays for clubs, societies, local communities, friends and family.
This is Chris reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Isle of Wight primary schools take part in the 4th annual Peach Games. A total of 300 pupils from primary schools across the island took part in the 4th annual Peach Games last Friday, 28th of June. The games were held at West White Sports Centre, and pupils tried a variety of sporting activities, including orienteering, archery, and many more. The games were organised by the Isle of Wight Council's Public Health team in collaboration with Premier School Sport Coaching to mark a successful continuation for the Partnership for Education, Attainment and Children's Health PEACH programme. Pupils rotated through team-based and individual activities to experience the benefits of sport. Each helped to improve personal skills, cardiovascular fitness, as well as coordination and balance. Alongside the sporting activities, pupils could learn about physical activity options, first aid, and take part in activities to boost confidence and self-esteem, all within the Athletes' Village. Also present on the day was Isle of Wight High Sheriff Graham Biss. He said, "It was great to see the energy and enthusiasm across all the different activities and all the children having a go." Simon Bryant, Director of Public Health for the Isle of Wight, added, "We know good health and school attainment are connected together. The Peach Games are important to promote physical activity, positive well-being and healthy competition. This supports young people to lead healthy lives with plenty of exercise and a good balanced diet." The feedback received has been really positive from organisers and participating primary schools for our sports leaders who were from 4 secondary schools. They worked tirelessly to ensure the event ran smoothly and provided inspiration and leadership to the primary aged participants.
This is Alison reading an article from the Island Echo entitled "New Penny Feathers Plans Emerge, Including 830 Homes and Supermarket." 830 new homes, a new supermarket, a national chain hotel and a care home could be built in Ryde under new plans being put forward by those behind Penny Feathers. For the past 17 years, there has been talk of developing a whole new area of Ryde on land off Brading Road, with a formal planning application submitted in 2013 and refused, before a second application was submitted in 2014. Outline planning permission was eventually granted in 2017, with a reserved matters application subsequently lodged in 2022. But in April 2023, councillors went against the council officer's recommendation of approving the application. It was said at the time that the decision would be taken to the Planning Inspectorate as the outline consent had expired, meaning the developers could not submit another second stage application in the hopes of gaining consent. Now, more than 12 months on, it appears that that costly move hasn't happened, and therefore new plans are being proposed, effectively starting the planning process again, which sets the Penny Feathers scheme back by 10 years. The proposed scheme that has become so familiar with locals appears to have been completely changed, with developers going back to the drawing board to put together plans they feel are better suited for the area. There is now no mention of a school, a car garage, or a community centre. Instead, commercial space will be created for a national chain hotel, a coffee shop, a care home, and a budget supermarket thought to be Lidl. However, significant green space will be retained and highway changes at Westridge Cross will take place. It's said that 35% of the 830 homes would be considered affordable housing. Previously, over 900 homes were set to be built. These 830 homes would be in addition to 450 homes set to be built close by at West Acre Farm, taking the total number of new homes in the area to 1,300. As before, the development would be phased over a number of years. It's thought that the build could take more than 10 years if it ever gets to the point of a shovel being put in the ground. Even if work began tomorrow, it would be 2035 until it's complete at the earliest, almost 30 years after Pennyfeathers was first touted. Dave Farrell, lead designer and project manager, has said, "We listened to comments from residents and councillors and went back to the drawing board. We have some exciting plans which include major improvements to local roads, a reduction in housing levels, and a new commercial space delivering new local jobs. The plans are not yet set in stone and will be shaped following consultation with Ryde residents, stakeholders, and the wider island community. Residents are being invited to find out more and have their say on the new plans at a drop-in engagement event on Wednesday the 10th of July between 1500 hours and 1930 hours at Ryde Castle." Dave concludes, "Residents are urged to come and find out more and leave their feedback. More importantly, what they would like to see on the community land which forms part of the scheme. This will help shape final plans before they are submitted to the Isle of Wight Council for consideration later in the year." A new project website has been set up, which will go live on the 10th of July at 1500 hours. www.pennyfeathers.co.uk.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. First ever zero emissions high-speed vessel announced for Isle of Wight. Red Funnel has announced a new partnership with leading maritime technology company Artemis Technologies, ATL. The partnership will introduce a high-performance emission-free vessel to its customers in late 2025. Red Funnel's Southampton to West Cowes route, currently served by Redjet 6 and 7, will be enhanced with the addition of a zero-emission electric e-foiling passenger ferry, Artemis EF24 passenger. Operation of the Artemis EF24 passenger will save up to 3,700 tonnes of CO2e per year. Using electricity from renewable sources will increase annual emissions savings to approximately 4,150 tonnes of CO2e. In addition to reducing air pollution and noise, the fully accessible passenger ferry will use cutting-edge hydrofoil propulsion technology to fly over waves, lifting the vessel out of the water to reduce drag and provide a smoother, quieter, and more comfortable experience for passengers. The Artemis EF24 passenger is a groundbreaking next step in the decarbonisation of the industry, and Red Funnel is thrilled to join two other ferry operators adopting the technology to decarbonise their operations. This addition to Red Funnel's fleet will provide the first zero-emissions commercial service between the South Coast and the Isle of Wight. Red Funnel's CEO Fran Collins said, We've been working with Artemis Technologies for several months to develop this partnership, and we're delighted to reach this exciting milestone as part of our journey to decarbonise our fleet. Delivering first-class service to our customers is our priority, and the Artemis EF24 passenger ferry will provide speed, comfort and reliability, as well as significantly reducing greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution. This is an important step towards transitioning to a sustainable and environmentally friendly fleet that will continue to provide a lifeline service for the Isle of Wight community, both now and for future generations. Dr. Ian Percy, OBE, double Olympic and multiple world champion sailor and Artemis Technologies CEO, added, "We're incredibly excited to partner with Red Funnel and bring the Artemis EF24 passenger ferry to the vital Southampton Isle of Wight route. The Artemis EF24 passenger represents a major leap forward in our mission to transform the maritime industry and future-proof our oceans and waterways. This partnership with Red Funnel underscores our commitment to international maritime standards and paves the way to a healthier planet for all. Together, we are leading the charge towards a more sustainable future. The Artemis EF24 passenger will be ready for passenger service in late 2025, when it will join the Red Funnel fleet."
This is Chris, reading an article from the Island Echo. No powers to stop dogs on beaches this summer as legal order lapses. The local authority has no legal power to stop dogs being taken onto the Isle of Wight's beaches this summer, as a public space protection order has lapsed, Island Echo can reveal. The oversight means that restrictions on when and where dogs can be exercised around the island's coastline cannot be enforced. Instead, the Isle of Wight Council is kindly asking dog owners to respect the previous arrangements as highlighted on existing signage. It was in January 2021 that a Public Spaces Protection Order, PSPO, relating to dog exclusion was made, running for a period of 3 years, unless extended by further orders. It replaced the previous dog control orders, DCOS. However, the PSPO has failed to be extended by the Isle of Wight Council this year, under Section 59 of the Anti-Social Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act 2014. Signage, still in place across the island, suggests dog owners cannot take their pets on certain beaches between the 1st of May and the 30th of September, or face a £100 fine. However, it has been confirmed by the Isle of Wight Council that this is no longer a valid order and is therefore not legally enforceable. The same is true for playgrounds and recreation parks that have restrictions imposed upon them. An Isle of Wight Council spokesperson has told Island Echo, renewal work for the public space protection orders relating to dogs on beaches is underway and will be consulted on in the early autumn. Until the new orders are in place, we would ask dog owners to respect the existing signage at our main beach resorts. We would also encourage all dog walkers, regardless of wherever dogs are exercised, to be responsible by keeping their pets under control and making sure they pick up after them. Although no fines will be issued this summer, it's said that community wardens will still be out and about, issuing advice and guidance to dog owners where necessary.
This is the second part of the Talking News, read by Jerry
And Ursula.
We begin with some more news items taken from the County Press and the Observer. £20,000 toilet facelift. After an enforced closure of more than a year, the seafront public toilets at Lake Slipway near Sandown have reopened. Lake Parish Council, which opened the loos on Monday, has shelled out more than £20,000 for extensive and complex repairs and renovation work, which includes a new purpose-built pump, the reinstatement of a broken pipe and other essential engineering works. The pump alone cost around £13,000. But access to the toilets has also been delayed by around 15 months following cliff falls, repair work to the promenade and incidents of antisocial behaviour. Parish Council Chair, Councillor Paul Bradding, said, "This has been a very frustrating process and we have reopened as soon as we can. Thanks to all involved in making this possible. But we recognise any future damage may result in a further closure and costs to the parish." Lake Parish Council is also in the process of replacing public toilets in New Road in Lake amid ongoing vandalism and antisocial behaviour. Lake Cliff Gardens public toilets have also recently been replaced.
New group focuses on Better Bay. A steering group has been set up to implement the Bay Place plan and make improvements to Sandown, Lake and Shanklin. They held their inaugural meeting recently to lay out some of the ideas and themes in the plan, which was published at the beginning of the year. The steering group is made up mainly of members of the public, with 2 councillors from each of the towns and parish councils of the Bay. They are joined by the Bay Regeneration Officer and Cabinet member responsible for generation from the Isle of Wight Council. The 8 areas to be concentrated are arts and culture, business, youth, events, hotels and holiday accommodation, natural environment, sport and community organisations. To get involved in any of the project groups, email Bay Area A Place Plan, Isle of Wight, Gov UK. There will be at least one annual public meeting to share progress and set out the plan for the following year.
Hundreds of people lined Ryde seafront to watch the Red Arrows as they took to the skies for their Isle of Wight Armed Forces Day display on Sunday. The aerobatics team put on a memorable show, twisting and turning in the cloudy skies above Ryde Sands. At points there were audible gasps from amazed onlookers who swarmed the esplanade and beaches to get the best view. And it didn't take long for some of that cloud to turn to the iconic red and blue colours synonymous with the world-famous crew. Starting at 11:30 a.m, the display lasted around 20 minutes and culminated with a round of applause.
House prices skyrocketing by Liam Chorley. The average house price on the Isle of Wight for first-time buyers has risen by a quarter over the past 5 years, new figures have shown. It comes as property website Rightmove said the typical mortgage payment for first-time buyers has increased by £400 a month and called on the next government to support those buying their first home. The latest figures from Land Register House Price Index show first-time buyers on the Isle of Wight were paying an average of £222,000 for a house in April. It was up 25% from an average of £177,400 5 years earlier. Overall house prices on the Isle of Wight have jumped 26% over 5 years, reaching £275,000 in April 2024. Tim Bannister, Rightmove's property expert, said reduced mortgage rates would help first-time buyers in the short term, more so than election housing promises. It comes as the property website said the average mortgage payment for a typical first-time buyer in Great Britain has risen by 61% over the past 5 years, from £667 a month in 2019 to £1,075 this year. Mr. Bannister added, as rates have increased over the last 5 years, The amount that a typical first-time buyer is paying each month on a mortgage has outstripped the pace of earning growth. Some first-time buyers are looking at extending their mortgage terms to 30 or 35 years to lower monthly payments, or looking at cheaper homes for sale so that they need to borrow less. He said, "We hope that the next government can support first-time buyers with well-thought-out policies which address the difficulties of saving up a large enough deposit and being able to borrow enough from a lender." Property Mark, a membership organisation for estate agents, said surging interest rates and inflation have impacted the housing market with force. The most recent land registry figures also show a significant drop in housing sales compared to 5 years prior. On the Isle of Wight, there were 87 sales in February this year, down from 199 5 years earlier.
Protest calls for jobs for all. Members and supporters of an Isle of Wight disability charity gathered in Newport on Saturday in protest over the lack of employment opportunities for people with learning disabilities. For around 28 years, John's Club has provided jobs, various social activities and community hubs for islanders with disabilities and mental health issues. Chair and founder John Phillips told the County Press, "The work isn't there for people with disabilities. Even small businesses can't employ people with learning disabilities because they haven't got the capacity. It's really important to some people to be working." John said all except one staff member at John's Club has a learning disability or mental health issue. Kyle Hollingsworth, who has been with the club since 2011 and started volunteering 8 years ago, said it has given him a place to go and has encouraged him to open up. The same can also be said for Gary Jones, 58, who used to work as a kitchen porter in cafes in Cowes and East Cowes. Meanwhile, the club's oldest member, Norman Ritchie, 84, has been involved with the charity for around 20 years. With the club support member, Michelle Mead, 37, has gone from living with her parents to moving in with her partner Paul. Staff member Jane Lambert, 52, said John and the club had been incredibly supportive during a difficult time for her personally, and the protest is about ensuring that their voices are heard. Today saw supporters hold up placards saying "Jobs for all" and "Do you see us now?" John added, "We need to get people with disabilities into work and we need to encourage them to be doing things out in the community more." John's Club has recently teamed up with House of Chili in Brainstone, providing work experience. It also has a hub in Shanklin and a community centre in Oakfield.
Island Seaman Braved the Storm by Liam Chorley. An Isle of Wight seaman who was working in the middle of the Solent during the Great Storm of 1987 has died. Michael Sidney Young of Cowes died at St Mary's Hospital on June the 20th, aged 80. He was born on June the 4th, 1944, and studied at Cowes Secondary Modern School, now Cowes Enterprise College, in the 1950s. On leaving school, he swiftly established a career as a seaman, firstly with Trinity House, then for the Merchant Navy, where he travelled throughout the world on a range of freight ships. He later returned to Trinity House to work within the pilotage service in the Solent, and in 1972 he married Jan. Michael saw many changes at Trinity House, including the transition from steam cutters to more modern motorised launches, as well as the pilotage service being taken over by Associated British Ports. He retired in 2004, aged 60, and spent more time on his hobbies, including fishing, metal detecting, and growing flycatchers and other coniferous plants to sell at car boot sales across the island. He belonged to several fishing clubs, and he was also a live member of Cowes Corinthian Yacht Club. Michael is survived by his wife Jan, son Mark, daughter Kate, son-in-law Hugh, and grandson Matthew. Michael also leaves behind his brother Vernon and sister Sally. His funeral will be held at the Isle of Wight crematorium on Monday, July the 15th at 3 p.m, and a celebration of his life will follow at Cowes Corinthian Yacht Club. Everyone is welcome, and the family requests that guests wear colours other than black if possible.
An historic first for Isle of Wight elections. Islanders went to the polls yesterday, Thursday, in what was an historic election for the Isle of Wight. For the first time ever, the island was divided into two constituencies, Isle of Wight West and Isle of Wight East. Polls opened at 7 a.m. and closed at 10 p.m, bringing an end to weeks of campaigning from candidates. In the West, there were 6 candidates: Cameron Pallin of the Isle of Wight Green Party, Ian Pickering of Reform UK, Richard Quigley of Ireland Labour, Bob Seeley of the Isle of Wight Conservatives, Nick Stewart of the Isle of Wight Liberal Democrats, and Rachel Thacker of the Alliance for Democracy and Freedom Party, ADF. Meanwhile, the 6 candidates in the East were Emily Brothers of Ireland Labour, David Grucock, Independent, Michael Lilly of the Isle of Wight Liberal Democrats, Viv Lollian of the Isle of Wight Green Party, Sarah Morris of Reform UK, and Joe Robertson of the Isle of Wight Conservatives. The county press sat down with all 12 MP hopefuls in the run-up to the election. Throughout their campaigns, the candidates were quizzed on a variety of topics, from ferries to the NHS. Head to countypress.co.uk and click the Politics tab to see our election coverage. The Isle of Wight was divided into 2 constituencies following a review by the Boundary Commission. Isle of Wight West has an electorate of 54,911, while Isle of Wight East has an electorate of 56,805. According to the Isle of Wight Council, a total of 10,159 postal votes were issued in the East. Meanwhile, in the West, 10,012 postal votes were issued. Previously, the island was one constituency, and at the last election in 2019, there was an electorate of 113,021. On that occasion, there were 74,442 votes cast, a turnout of 65.9%. Bob Seeley, Conservative, held the seat between June the 8th, 2017 to May the 30th, 2024. Last night saw thousands of ballot papers counted, and the county press was there to report on the action as it unfolded. You can catch up with everything that happened at countypress.co.uk.
A Spitfire display and a high-speed Second World War motorboat sail past will be among the draws when the Cowes Classic Sailing Regatta returns from Sunday. Classic cars, motorbikes and yachts will be joined by aircraft displays and free entertainment. A 932 Rolls-Royce, a 2007 Aston Martin and a recreation of the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang will be among the four-wheelers on display on Cowes Parade. Also taking place will be a Harley-Davidson motorbike drive-past and live music from Harriet Jane. There will be more than 100 classic yachts, including meter yachts, old gaffers, Darwins, Dragons, Sunbeams, Swallows and XODs, which will be racing from Monday, July the 8th. The event is supported by Cowes Town Council and organised by the Royal London Yacht Club. Cowes Classics Day is now in its 3rd year, said coordinator Brian Howard. We're delighted it continues to grow and attract car enthusiasts from the island and beyond. News for 2024 is the association with the Classic Channel Regatta, which includes 2 days racing at Dartmouth and the round Ile-de-Bréhat race, which starts from Cowes on Sunday, July the 14th.
The Isle of Wight Council insists it is making steady progress with plans to reopen routes in and out of Ventnor after revealing boreholes to help determine whether Leeson Road can reopen have not yet been drilled. Works for the 85-metre boreholes could begin August, the council said. Leeson Road, the main road between Shanklin and Ventnor, has been shut following a major landslide in December 2023. Evidence from the boreholes will be gathered and analysed and will help the council determine whether to reopen the road fully or partially in the autumn. Data will add to that already collected and will assist Island Roads and the council, which is looking at having an early warning system installed. Work on possible models for an early warning system is already underway. Meanwhile, safety work to reopen another road, Gills Cliff Road, will begin shortly. The road has been closed since a significant rockfall wiped out traffic lights in February. Forthcoming work will see large sections of the rock face covered by heavy-duty steel netting designed to prevent further debris from falling. A council spokesman said, "We fully understand the problems being faced by the Ventnor community as a result of recent events, and we have been working hard with numerous agencies and partners to find resolutions to what are difficult and highly technical issues. Our intention remains to reopen all these important routes as soon as we are confident it is safe to do so. While there is still work to be done and issues to be overcome, we are making steady progress." The progress made by Southern Water at Newport Road is the most immediate bit of good news, but we are also moving forward on the other more complex issues at Leeson Road and Gillscliff Road. Also, this work will continue, and I can assure residents that we are all pulling together with the common aim of improving access to the town as soon as it is possible. Island Roads added it is working with Ventnor Fringe organisers to assist with any specific transportation issues in the run-up to the event.
Homeless shoplifter 40 would rather be in jail. A prolific offender asked to remain in prison so he could have a roof over his head as he awaits sentencing for further offences after being released out on licence. Warren Russell, of no fixed abode, appeared before Isle of Wight magistrate via video link at the end of June. The 40-year-old admitted 3 counts of theft between June the 7th and June the 16th and attempted theft on June the 14th. Prosecutor Liz Miller said Russell stole and attempted to steal goods to the value of £211.80. Michael McGoldrick, defending, said Russell had been released from prison in mid-May and made homeless. He said he had been living in a tent on Ryde seafront, but youths burned down his tent for a joke. Russell said, "I would rather be in here in prison with a roof over my head. I've got nowhere to live." Russell was remanded in custody and his case adjourned to July the 16th.
Teen rowers on a French mission. Island rowers Carter Horrocks, 16, and Louis Shearsby, 15, will be rowing for Team GB in Rouen, France at the under-16s level on June the 13th. The Shanklin Sandown Rowing Club athletes were selected after excelling in the British Rowing Great British Trials on Sunday. To compete in France is going to cost them £2,000. Carter's mum, Ursula Horrocks, has set up a GoFundMe page to help the pair meet the cost of travel to France and accommodation there, transporting their boat and coaching fees.
These are white memories and nostalgia items. So, Historical Curious, So Easy to Overlook by David White. When travelling around the island, or indeed out walking, how many historic artefacts go unnoticed? Sometimes, even if we notice them, the question may arise, what is that? Pictured here are some historical artefacts that you may or you may not have seen, and a brief description of their history. A decorative lamp standard adorns the junction at the top of Oak Hill Road near Ryde, where it meets Pondwell Hill. Dating from around late 1890s to early 1900s, it belonged to the St. Helens Electric Light Company Ltd., founded by a man with the interesting name of Edmund Ironside Bax. This has been listed as a Grade II artefact. Also in Ryde, a building that most people pass every day has many a tale to tell, this being the Prince Consort. Have you ever wondered how it got its name? When Queen Victoria lived at Osborne, her husband, Prince Albert, applied to join the Royal Yacht Squadron. However, so the story goes, he was refused membership mainly because he was German. So what did Victoria do? She built him his own rival yacht club, thus named the Prince Consort Yacht Club. It proved to be very prestigious, having many influential people of the time as members. Walking along the beach at Bembridge, you may notice a building fronting the beach. On the front elevation, you will notice an old faded sign scripted on the wall stating the Garland Club. It records that here in 1894, a Colonel Morton founded the Garland as a ladies' private bathing club. Unsubstantiated rumour has it that it later became the private haunt of a group of top Hollywood actors, but that appears to be Isle of Wight folklore. Driving along the south coast of the island, you come to Brooke. As you pass the turning to the village on the seaward side, you will notice near the cliff edge an old stone shed. This was the old Brooke lifeboat station. Opened in 1890, it was instrumental in many heroic rescues. The lifeboat stationed there saved more than 150 lives. The lifeboat, which would have been a very large open boat, would be rowed by the crew. It would have been hauled down a cut in the cliffs by horsepower, and upon recovery a winch would have operated to pull the boat back to the station shed. The station closed in 1915. Perhaps one now for the walkers. As is widely known, the Second World War pipeline, named Pluto, ran across the island, eventually ending in France and aiding the war effort by the delivery of fuel. The route took it across the island was a closely guarded secret which helped the avoidance of any sabotage attempt. The pipeline was secretly marked for the repair workers should any maintenance be needed, but how was it marked? By faked stiles with upright concrete posts crossed by wooden slats and concealed in hedgerows. A few of these markers can still be found across the island.
100 years ago, in June 1924, Isle of Wight Liberal MP General Seeley was universally criticised at the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Labour Conference held at the Cooperative Hall in Cowes. Mrs Palmer said General Seeley had proclaimed he loved his electorate, but she doubted his sincerity. Mrs Palmer praised the Labour government and said an atmosphere of gloom and depression had been replaced by one of hope since the present administration had come to power. Conservative candidate Captain MacDonald was critical of the Labour government's nationalisation policy at a meeting held in East Cowes. He said that nationalisation did not work and pointed to the government's experiences of rail during the First World War. Captain MacDonald said the railways were a great deal better in private hands than they had been under the ownership of the government. 75 years ago, in July 1949, Postmaster General Wilfrid Paling MP undertook an island tour. He visited the Ventnor, Ryde and Newport offices and spoke with nearly every member of staff. During his Ryde visit, he said staff were well off for accommodation compared to several other areas he had visited. He added that there was a manpower shortage, and as a result of this, postal services might not be as numerous as they might be.
50 years ago, in June 1974, Medina Borough Council was told that more than £140,000 was lost in island rate revenue because 1,500 properties stood empty. An island-wide speed limit was just one of the measures in a draft policy statement being considered by the County Council. The proposed demolition of Grade 2 listed Right Corner House restaurant received the backing of Medina Borough Council. A verdict of self-neglect was given at an inquest on IRA hunger striker Michael Gowan, who died at Parkhurst Prison. Island MP Stephen Ross added his backing to a campaign to save the J.S. White Sports and Recreation Club.
Looking back at the hopelessly situated train stations in Ventnor. The 1912 Walled Lock Guide to the Isle of Wight says of Ventnor, "The streets which run uphill from the sea are as higgledy-piggledy as well can be. The simplest way to go down to the sea is to go steadily down, where you can go steadily till you come to it." Well, obviously, Walled Lock didn't think too much of Ventnor. Perhaps the reviewer arrived there by train. Ventnor had 2 railway stations in those days, Ventnor West and Ventnor. Both were hopelessly situated, being miles away from the town centre, and as for a day at the beach, Ventnor town station could hardly have been further away. It was actually perched some 300 feet above sea level at the junction of Ocean View Road and Mitchell Avenue, in what had once been a chalk quarry that in its heyday had provided the stone for many of Ventnor's finer houses. In 1866 it was chosen as the site for Ventnor's first railway station. Today, nearly every trace of the once sprawling station yard has disappeared under an industrial estate, and the sole remaining feature is the entrance to the 1,300-yard-long tunnel that leads to Wroxall. Still visible, it is now boarded up and houses a plant belonging to Southern Water. It is difficult for us today to appreciate how life for islanders were completely transformed by the railways. The Portsmouth to London railway line had opened in 1859, and it had meant that the islanders who could afford it were able to have the Times and fresh Whitstable oysters on their breakfast table by 9 a.m. The Ride to Ventnor line proved the only profitable line on the island, most of that profit coming from the Ride to Shanklin section, which is the only line to survive today. For 99 years, Ventnor Station played an important part in the life of the town, but a competitor was waiting in the wings, the motor car, and by the 1950s and 60s it had won the day. Most of the island's lines closed, and for Ventnor Station it all ended in tears at 10 one Sunday night in April 1966, when the last ever train to Ryde pulled out for the last time. Once upon a time Ventnor had a watermill. It was in Pierce Street, roughly where the Winter Gardens is today. Houses in Alexandra Gardens now sit on the site of the mill pond, which was fed by runoff water from St Boniface Down, the watercourse giving Spring Hill its name. It provided water for Bert's Brewery, and having filled the pond and driven the mill, the outflow cascaded over the cliffs before flowing into the sea. In 1902, the steam train the stream was diverted to form a picturesque waterfall running into an ornamental garden. Today the garden has gone, and it's been replaced by a municipal concrete. In a nod to the pretty pond that once stood in the garden, children can now play in a cement pond, in its centre a concrete model of the Isle of Wight.
A fascinating peek behind the scenes. The Isle of Wight Festival has slowly become a significant feature in the international music calendar. As for a weekend in June each year, the industry focuses on our small island at the bottom of southern England. For years, I've been attending the annual event like any other punter, but in the last few years, my podcast, Beyond the Title, has earned me the opportunity to gain a media pass. However, this year I was lucky enough to go one better and attend an amazing insight into the Sky Arts mammoth television coverage. This was the Isle of Wight Festival as I've never seen it before. The field adjacent to Seaclose Park is normally reserved for football tournaments or just a leisurely kickabout. Yet over the festival weekend there wasn't a ball in sight, as the whole area had been transformed into a professional broadcasting arena with the Sky Arts marquees as a centrepiece swarming with crew, management teams and artists. The coverage was perfectly presided over by Sky by festival stalwarts Edith Bauman and Sean Keaveney, who were forever on hand to chat with acts who entered the field. Indeed, it became obvious whenever a band was about to make an entrance, as suddenly a swarm of journalists circled around, waiting to either snap a photo or get a few words. As a journalist, I always like playing the long game, and competitive games aren't always good for me. Instead, I focused on those who were happy to wait around and chat without the cutthroat noise of media impatience. One such band who were happy with this relaxed atmosphere was the 990s rock icons Feeder. With so many festival anthems, it was almost impossible for me to write a 5-minute interview, and relied upon the kindness and generosity of their manager to give me 7. Celebrating their 30th anniversary in music this year, both lead guitarist Grant Nicholas and bass guitarist Taka Heroes rolled back the years and opened up about the tragedy of losing founder member and drummer John Lee in 2002, which almost put a stop to their musical dominance. Yet I'm a firm believer that it's impossible to halt creativity, and to see them light up the big top on Saturday night, it's obvious that the decision to continue in light of tragic circumstances has ultimately paid off. Beyond the music, this year's Isle of Wight Festival enabled me to achieve a long-standing goal. The evergreen Jo Wiley helped me fulfill one of my podcast dreams when she agreed to appear on an episode of Beyond the Title back in 2022. Since then, we've kept in touch via email, and when I heard that she was headlining the Big Top on Sunday night, going up against the American punk pioneers Green Day on the main stage, I knew I had to get in touch. This was my ultimate climax to one of my best festivals ever, and roll on 2025.
And now we have some What's On. At the Medina Theatre in Newport, Sweet Charity is being presented by the White Strollers, and it's a funny feel-good musical packed with well-known songs. That's on Friday the 12th to Sunday the 13th of July, and tickets are £19.50 or £15.50 for the under-16s. Also at Medina, we have A Night to Remember, the Motown show, which takes you back in time to 1960s Detroit. That's on at Friday, 19th of July at 7:30pm. Tickets are £29 or £26.50 for concessions. Top Secret, The Magic of Science is a fast, colourful, magical, science-filled show filled with mystery, suspense and lots of mess. It will inspire and educate every young budding magician and scientist. And this is Saturday the 20th of July at 2pm. Tickets are £13.50 or £12 for a child, and a family of 4 is a special rate of £44. And lastly, at Medina Leisure, we have Jim Davidson slap on the goose fat and battle through the dark and murky Woking-festive waters and join him for another evening of his alternative comedy. He's on the Saturday the 4th of August at 7:30pm, and tickets are £28.50.
And here we have West Wight Drop-In Support Group for people living with diabetes. At 2pm, support group for people living with diabetes. All welcome, Kath and Mike, 17 School Green Road, Freshwater, Diabetes Group, POY, gmail.com, or 01983752168. And the White Strollers Sweets Charity, the musical, at 2:30pm. 14 to £18, 12th of July to 14th of July. A funny, feel-good musical filled with toe-tapping tunes, brought to you by the White Strollers, renowned for their pantomimes, carnival appearances and musicals, in aid of island charities. One Leisure Medina Theatre, Fairley Road, Newport, Medina Theatre. Gov UK, the usual number 01983823884. The last BBC Star on Literary Festival lineup. The Isle of Wight Literary Festival has added another household name to its roster of talent this year, a famous broadcast presenter and author. National treasure Claire Baldings is bringing her latest book, Isle of Dogs, to the Isle of Wight. Claire will appear at this year's Isle of Wight Literary Festival, which is taking place in Cowes on October the 3rd to the 6th, to talk about her love for Britain's favourite pet. She joins big names such as Susie Dent, Giles Brandreth, Tracy Borman and General Sir Michael Jackson. Her book, Isle of Dogs, outlines how Britain is shaped by its dogs. Claire has always been fascinated by the impact of dogs which they have on our lives and their place in our national story. In Isle of Dogs, she explores the characteristics of our favourite breeds, why we're drawn to them and what they bring out in us, from how we work to how we live. She talks to people whose everyday survival depends on their dog. Claire also delves into the work professionals encounter with dogs and how humans use our canine friends' superior senses to root out drugs, discover disease, detect bombs and rescue missing people.
And now we have some letters. Hayley Gardner from the NSPCC, the local campaign managers for London and the South East, writes, "Help the children. The general election is here, so there's a chance we've seen prospective Isle of Wight political candidates and their supporters knocking on our doors. This gives us the chance to speak to individuals from all political parties about what they will do to support babies, children and young people. We want to encourage political candidates to be a voice for children if they're elected as our local MP. Working at the NSPCC, I know the impact abuse and neglect can have on a child, but I also know how quality support can help to keep those children safe and help those who have experienced abuse to recover. Children need to be protected at home, in school, online, and in our local community. That's why I'm asking everyone to urge political parties to prioritise preventing abuse and neglect so every child can grow up safe and healthy. Please join the NSPCC to ensure our new Isle of Wight MPs speak up for children. Go to www.nspcc.org.uk.
Wither and Die, or Can Branson Help? From Mark Barrows in Ventnor. Having lived in this beautiful seaside town of Ventnor for most of my adult life, I fear that the powers that be, the Isle of Wight Council, seems quite happy to let the fate of this town wither and die on the vine. With the council's ineptitude, the townsfolk feel abandoned. So, not one to sit on one's hands, I have put pen to paper and appealed to a higher entity. No, not God, but the next best thing. Sir Richard Branson, with all his billions and love for trains, he could certainly rebuild our rail link to Ventnor and the outside world again, because the way things are going, it may be our last and only option.
Linda Andrews writes, "No degree of common sense. Water has been running along the side of the Ventnor-Whitwell Road just after the old railway crossing for at least 2 years. So the powers to be decide to investigate this, whilst this is the only way to and from Ventnor. Why couldn't this have waited until the upper Ventnor Road was opened? Who decided it needed to be investigated now rather than a year ago? Obviously a person who no doubt has a degree of some type, but no common sense."
Well done to all involved in Cycle Track, from Tim Cooper, Totton, Hampshire. In my childhood, I lived in a house that backed onto Afton Marsh. In those days, the 1970s, there was no footpath around the marsh and an open rubbish tip where the recycling centre is, where we would root around looking for old prams, so we could take the wheels off for our go-karts. And, dare I say more, we used to make rafts out of wood from there with old oil drums and float on the Afton Marsh River there. In those days, the river was stretched every so often, not quite sure by who, but meant the river was much lower and less flooding and more free-flowing and clearer than it is now. The reason for my letter is to praise whoever it was that has installed the new hard-standing cycle walkway there. I moved to the mainland some 40-odd years ago and returned this week to visit family who still live there, and cycled along this new path. It must have taken some thinking on the building of it, as it's on wet ground, prone to flooding, but it seems to have been well designed and built, and it was a pleasure to cycle along it, so well done to all involved.
Worrying, but here's a solution, writes John Graney of Brading. The news reports of battery charger fires are worrying. Clearly the batteries should have some kind of overheat protection. Maybe some do, and some don't, and some may be faulty. A belt and braces additional safety approach might involve a device which could be inserted into the main supply to the battery charger, whether integral or not, with a heat sensing probe or attachment which could be placed on or very near the battery. When the temperature in the vicinity of the battery reached an unsafe level, well below combustion, and before any runaway reaction could be started, the power would be cut. An alarm could also be sounded. I mean, it may be inconvenient to wake up in the morning to find your bike or scooter is not charged, but it is surely better than not waking up at all.
Now, education has been neglected, from Paul Knocker, Bembridge. What a tragedy that this election has neglected the education crisis, which seems to have been dominated by the Labour Party's proposal to remove the VAT exemption from private school fees. When the long-term prosperity of this country depends on the best education and training for children. A recent YouGov poll for The Times found that only 10% of parents thought schools today were preparing pupils well for life skills demonstrating the depth of public dissatisfaction with the present education system. This was endorsed by a PwC survey of businesses in the UK. Improving the education system, providing the skills and experience they need, is one of the most important factors for securing long-term economic growth. One of the conclusions in the report by the Times Education Commission, published 2 years ago, was that the education needs to be reimagined for the 21st century, with a new curriculum involving the latest technology and assessment procedures. A one-size-fits-all education system is failing to draw out the individual talent of every child. The report also covered the latest international student assessment study for the 34 OECD countries, indicating that Britain lags behind comparable nations that have better integrated creativity and entrepreneurship into their systems. The life satisfaction score of UK 15-year-olds was the second lowest. Perhaps these conclusions have something to do with the fact that pupil population has increased significantly, but spending per pupil in England and Wales in 2024 remains 3% below 2010 levels, the source the IFS. So no real term spending growth on education in the past 14 years.
Goodbye from Jerry
and Ursula.
The BBC In Touch programme follows, and the scaffolding news follows that.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello. Evocative, yes, but as a blind wildlife enthusiast, I want to know not only what wild animals sound like, but what they look like, and of course also what they feel like. Now, Andrew Hesser agrees with me, and he's been experimenting with how best to make some of that happen.
We soon decided everything life-size whales would use slightly more clay, and your oven wasn't quite big enough, was it? So
we'll be finding out more about that wildlife workshop for visually impaired people later in the programme. But first, Something you will have heard plenty about lately, some would say too much, is the forthcoming general election. But how much of what you've heard has dealt with the issue of disability generally, and for In Touch, of course, specifically visual impairment? New research from disability charity Sense reveals just how forgotten and left behind some disabled people feel. Sense's research shows almost half of disabled people feel they aren't important to political parties, with around the same number saying politicians don't do enough to engage them to secure their vote. Well, someone who's been working hard to find out where the parties stand on disability is visually impaired journalist Emma Tracy, who presents the BBC's disability and mental health podcast Access All. Emma, before we get on to the parties themselves, what's the vibe you've been getting from the disabled people who've been contacting you?
Well, Peter, it does reflect that Sense research. People feel that they're not seen. They felt very unheard before the election and during the campaign as well. And they also feel like they can't see themselves in politics. They're not seeing disabled people as MPs. And, you know, you have to see it to be it. And you want to see people who are reflecting your life and who understand your situation as well.
And what are the main sort of topics they've been raising with you?
Some of the issues are mental health, a lot of people asking about housing and, you know, people who have inaccessible housing, inappropriate housing, COVID and long COVID, social care has been a really big one, education and special educational needs and disabilities, and also waiting lists for autism diagnoses as well, and so much more, Peter.
And who exactly have you spoken to?
In terms of party representation, I've spoken to Mims Davies, who's the Minister for Disabled People, Health and Work in the Conservative Party. Spoken to Angela Rayner, Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. Ed Davey, Leader of the Liberal Democrats. Mags Lewis from the Green Party. Liz Saville-Roberts from the Plaid Cymru. And Marion Fellows from Scottish National Party. Now, we did ask Reform UK to put somebody up for an interview, but they weren't able to do that.
Now, people may feel that there hasn't been enough coverage of disability, and yet, you know, there were a number of issues which were building up a head of steam before the general election was announced. I mean, the government's plans, for example, to review disability benefits, they very much have been talked about in the news. What are the parties saying to you about that?
Lots of them said the welfare bill needs to come down. Others said that more people need to get the benefits, that the benefits need to go up. Now, Labour and Conservatives, I asked them both about the language around the benefits chat and what was going on before the election about a consultation, which is still ongoing, by the way, around changes to personal independence payments. The Tories had been saying that benefits sometimes are a lifestyle choice. And I asked her about that, and she said that people who cannot work need to be supported and separated from the people that she was talking about with language like that. Angela Rayner from Labour said that she wanted to have companies do disability pay gap reporting. So tell the government how many disabled people they have and what they earn differently to their non-disabled colleagues. And she would hope that that would help employers get more disabled people into work and help disabled people to move up the chain, which kind of doesn't always happen. So there's lots of different talk from different parties about benefits, but there are just two of the little elements of it.
Another story which was around before the election was announced was a number of carers having to pay back benefits. Just remind us what that was all about and what was being said and the range of views you've been hearing from party spokespeople.
Right. So before the election was announced, there were a lot of stories in the media and a lot of people coming forward saying that they had begun to work, but they didn't realise the amount of work they could do without their carers allowance being stopped. So carers allowance is for unpaid carers who care for somebody for anything above 35 hours a week. I think it's £81 per week. But if you work a certain amount of hours, you don't get it. And if you've worked and gotten it for a certain amount of time, they were saying that they were having to pay it back. And a lot of carers are in lower paid jobs. They're working part-time. They're scraping by, and actually having to repay that was a massive deal for a lot of people, and it was quite a big scandal. And actually Marion Fellows from the Scottish National Party said that she'd been working on the post office scandal, which we all know about and have been reading about and hearing about for many, many months now. And she said that basically she's learned from that, if you're not in power, what you do to get something sorted is for all the parties to work together. And she would plan to work really hard with all the parties to sort of wipe that slate clean and stop people having to repay money that they were accidentally paid by the DWP, because the argument is that the Department for Work and Pensions didn't let these carers know that they were overpaying. So it went unnoticed for a long time. So the money built up. You know, the Liberal Democrats talked about carers allowance as well, talking about upping the money that unpaid carers get too. They talked a lot about social care. You know, Ed Davey talked about upping carers' wages and having a college of carers. So there's kind of training across the board. But I think blind people will say that sometimes you have a care package, you have money there, but you cannot get the people that you need to help you with what you need help with because there aren't enough carers around. So that was what he said he would do to deal with that.
What's the situation this time about the numbers of disabled people actually standing as candidates in the general election?
Actually, when the Disability Action Plan came out earlier this year, it said that something new would be put in place for disabled people standing, which would include blind people who might need something in different formats. They might need someone to walk with them when they're knocking on doors. That all costs money unless you can get a willing volunteer. But, you know, the Disability Action Plan said they would bring something in 2025. And then suddenly an election was called. So there wasn't anything in place for disabled people wanting to stand. Now, a disability think tank did some work on this. They reckon around 4% of the candidates on this election are disabled, but they'll have a proper full figure after the election of how many disabled MPs there are. But then we spoke to all the different parties, and one of the questions we actually asked them all was how many candidates they had. Labour said something like 14%. The Greens said they have quite a lot of disabled people and quite an active disability group. Other parties said that they didn't know how many, and others actually started to name one or two of their disabled MPs, which is a little bit amusing. They all had different answers. A lot of them weren't counting it. So the Disability Policy Centre is counting it. So they'll have a full figure later on. But they've been really helpful in helping us figure out how many disabled people are standing, despite there being nothing in place for adjustments around that.
Emma Tracy, thank you very much indeed. If you want to listen to those interviews in full, you can do that by searching for Access All on BBC Sounds, and there are BSL versions on the iPlayer. Now, a love of wildlife is common to many of us, whether we can see or not. As we explore the great outdoors, other senses such as sound and smell can still tell us a good deal about wildlife. But for Andrew Hesser, the thirst to understand better what creatures actually look and feel like set him on a mission. Well, we wanted to find out more about that, and the other morning I caught up with him at the British Library in London, where a group of visually impaired people were meeting for a workshop led by artist Carly Allen to explore some marine models which form part of Andrew's project.
So at the moment we've got a table in the middle of the room with 5 whales that Everton has made. We can tell you which one you've got, and then we can rotate them so that you get a chance to explore different ones.
When I was a kid, people were always showing me models of things, you know, buildings, houses and things like that. And I wasn't actually very interested in things. I mean, about the only thing I wanted to touch and know more about was animals. And as far as wild animals are concerned, you can't really get close to them, and if you do, they'll eat you. Andrew Hesser, this is an idea that has led you to do various things. Just explain the background to your idea and the workshops that you've been holding this morning.
I'm totally blind, and I got to the stage when, enjoying countryside walks with family and friends, they'd be saying, oh look, there's a robin, or oh, is that a starling or a blackbird over there? And, you know, I listened with interest. They would try and describe the different shapes and sizes of these birds, but without really getting close to them, which is very difficult anyway, and is actually illegal. To touch wild creatures, you wouldn't want to touch an illegal anyway, would you?
No.
And as you say, dangerous. I thought, well, maybe some raised diagrams would be quite useful, and I dabbled with a little bit of that.
It isn't very satisfying. I think there are some blind people who will get things from that, but I wasn't one of them, I have to admit.
Me neither. So I thought, let's start collecting 3D models. I looked around and there were some commercially available and I bought some. And then I started to ask around artists and creators, and I thought, well, lots of people work in wood. You see lots of stalls in markets and craft fairs of fruit that they seem to like to make in bowls and things. But how about them putting their talent to creating models out of wood of actual creatures? The ones that I have managed to inspire have done some wonderful work, particularly Cornwall woodcarvers, and also somebody we'll talk to in a moment called Everton, who works in clay, and he took on the project of making me some clay marine creatures.
Here I'm putting a sperm whale for the people here.
I mean, let's just have a quick grovel. Right. It's got long, sticking out ears. That's the first thing that I would say. At least I hope they are. I'm not sure they are, actually. Are they ears?
Do you think that that's the tail?
I don't know.
This is a whale.
Oh, well, it might. Yeah, but I've no idea what a whale actually
There you go.
feels like.
This is wonderful
Even
experience.
looks
Yeah.
like, you
Yeah.
see. So, is that the back of him?
Sperm whale.
Right.
So that's
Tell
his
me.
tail there.
Yeah. So it's a long tail that goes right across the back of him.
Yeah, it sort of splits into two.
So it's not a tail that stretches out behind him. It goes
That's
out.
it. Yeah.
I didn't know that. The front is. I expected a sort of giant head, I think. That isn't a giant head.
No, it kind of just is an extension
Yeah.
of the body, isn't it?
You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
different whales, different shapes. So this one is the sperm whale.
Yeah. So really it is the head and the body all kind of joined together.
Yeah.
It's not like our head, is it?
No. Like, where's the neck?
Yeah, where is the neck? Everton, help me out here.
No neck.
Has he got a neck?
No.
How does he swallow? Everton, tell me your approach to this. You're visually impaired yourself, but you have sight.
Yeah, but limited, low vision.
How did you set about this project?
About 3 years ago, I was introduced to do pottery. At first, I never interested. Then it's like every time I say something to my teacher, can you help me make this? They never say no. So I said, wow, these people can assist me to make anything. I start making, and I make animals. So I come to the British Library at the art workshop, and that's where I meet Andrew. He's somewhat interested in nature. I said, well, if you're interested in whales, you can give me the job, I'll make some.
And here they are.
This session is marking the official transfer of Everton's pieces to Andrew. It's a 2-suitcase operation. So Everton arrived with the whales in his suitcase. Andrew has arrived with an empty suitcase.
Security stopped me coming in. I think they thought I was stealing the books.
The whales will be wrapped up and transferred to Andrew's suitcase, and then we'll go off on their journey.
So these little bits down the side, like flaps, are they?
They're fins.
They are his fins. Okay. I had no idea that they were like just a great long body. I don't know what I did envisage, really. It's got a load of sort of dots on the top, if I've got it round the right way. I think I have.
That one is the humpback whale.
That's a humpback whale.
Yeah.
Andrew, tell me about this morning's workshop. I mean, how did it go and what were people's reactions?
It's still at the kind of fledgling, if you like, stage, my Brian's Quest project, which I'm calling Wildlife Within Reach. My next challenge is how do I get these models, just like you're experiencing now, in front of visually impaired people? And then plan how we could get the funding and whatever else is needed to make that happen.
I think what it might be a good idea, maybe to put on the left corner or the right corner, just got like a little dymo tape in braille, just to say what the animal is, so that apart from feeding it, somebody like myself could then feel the braille, oh yes, DOG or something like that, so I know what the animal is.
These are all scale models. So when you touch a whale that is bigger or smaller than the previous one you touched, that's what it is like in life. They're something like 1/45th of the real size of them. So some of these are about 7 metres long in reality.
I mean, we're in the British Library, most impressive building. Where has that come into this project?
They invented the workshops, and each month people can apply to attend, and they choose one item from the collection, their art collection, paintings or sculptures, and base a 2-hour workshop for visually impaired people around that artwork, combining, audio and tactile.
It's so cool. The basking shot's got the most amazing open doors.
Yeah.
Oh, it's got gorgeous texture, yeah.
Well, also with us is Emma Tutton, who's the Access and Outreach Manager of the British Library. Can you just explain how you've become involved with this?
I'm in the learning team here at the British Library, and as part of my programme we run monthly art workshops specifically for people who are blind and partially sighted, and those workshops are inspired by different areas of our collections. And it was a very fortuitous meeting of Andrew and Everton, who came along to a workshop, I believe it was last September, during the run of an exhibition that we were holding at the time about animals, which had lots of lovely parts of our collection all inspired by animals, including sounds from our wonderful sound archive. They are run by another artist who does audio description at the workshops, and each month they're different sort of themes.
The humpback whale is coming. A bit of a showstopper. The humpback whale's got this gorgeous texture on the top of its head.
So where are your visually impaired participants coming from? How do they know about it, and how do they actually get here?
We try to advertise with places like Vocalise. We have local contacts with organisations such as Blind Aid, and we basically send out the details sort of on a rolling kind of basis so that people can sign up and they can join the workshops. They're all free. So if people wanted to get in touch and they wanted to send an email to find out more, they can email us outreach@bl.uk. You don't have to live locally. We would like the word to get out as far and wide as possible.
Just finally, just remind us about Brian's quest.
Well, it looks at all kinds of ways of getting access to nature, whether that's access to the countryside, tactile or audio experiences in nature reserves. We just try and find ways that we can get the same access to nature through audio description or whatever as sighted people.
Wow!
That was Andrew Hesser, along with Everton Amos, Emma Tutton, Carly Allen, and indeed members of the workshop. That's all for today. We always want to hear your reactions to what you've heard on the programme. You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk. You can leave voice messages on 0161 836 1338, or you can go to our website bbc.co.uk/in touch, where there's more information. From me, Peter White, and producer today, Fern Lulham. Goodbye.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Scaffolding and skips news week commencing 5th of July 2024. Newport area, Oggie's Fish Shop, 2 to 3 St Thomas Square. French Franks, 13 St Thomas Square. 67A High Street. 130 to 132 Stainless Games in the High Street. 8 Chapel Street. Andrew Ross, 28 Holyrood Street. On the pavement outside JD Sports, 110 to 112 High Street. Guildhall, right hand side of the High Street. Vectus Housing Association, 30 Chapel Street, and 71 to 74 Croker Street.
Right area, pavement outside 29 to 30 Cross Street. Ice Cream Parlour Esplanade, Harriet House 44 George Street, Vine House 16 Castle Street, Outside Artisan Union Street, 37 Union Street, 60 High Street, 4A and 4B Pier Street Seaview, St Leonard's 1 Pier Road Seaview, 17 Cross Street, Card Factory, 32 High Street. And right area skips the Lodge, Ferry Road, Seaview, Schoolhouse Barn, Seaview High Street, Seaview.
Ventnor area, 2 East Street, Co-op in Pierce Street, Mari Laters and Alma Esplanade, Post Office in Steep Hill Road, 50 North Street, 1 Sydenham House, Hanborough Road, and Hanborough House in Hanborough Road, and Hursts in High Street. And the Ventnor area skips is at Ventnor Fire Street, 19 South.
Sandown area, 10 St John's Road.
Shanklin area, the Crab Inn, 94 High Street, and 112 Regent Street.
Cowes area, 1 Beckford Road.